It's Aloha Tuesday, 4 days to the big day. Woo! And it's breakfast with Bob.
Hey, Pacho Man! Round of applause for our man, Pacho Man! Day 2 breakfast with Bob. We're here for our 10th anniversary of beautiful Huggos on the Rocks. We are brought to you by HOKA, Opolar, UCAN, Velofix, Normatec, Active, Canyon, Form Goggles, Amp Human, Four Seasons Resort, Hualalai, where we do our championship edition on Sunday. And our first guest of the day, two-time Ironman 70.3 world champion, two-time Ironman world champion, gold medalist from 2008 in Beijing. Give it up for the great Jan Frodeno. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, really happy to be here and not having my crutches somewhere in the corner or something not feeling good. I'm really happy to be here.
Healthy.
Healthy, fit, strong, ready to go.
You just swam a lap of the course out here?
I did. Some of you may know we've been over in Maui and I've been swimming 25 yards for a month. So it's been odd swimming a long way without getting dizzy, you know, not doing too many turns. So I really wanted to get in one lap and just see what I could do after the guys pumped out some fast times on Sunday.
Yeah, I think Brownlee went like 46:01 or something. So
yeah, so obviously I wanted to try go 45. I realized at 45 I still had about 1,000 meters to go, so I might save that for Saturday.
There you go. So last year, obviously, you had what a lot of us consider one of the greatest races of all time. You were at the Ironman South Africa, the 70.3 World Championship, and it was you and Brownlee and Gomez, and you ran 106. Brownlee ran 107, and Gomez ran 108, and anybody who watched that race was like, this is one of the greatest triathlons we have ever seen. You come out of that, the highest high, because now it's, a month till Kona, and take us through what happened next.
I got on the plane in South Africa to go over to Australia. I was going to try and prepare in a similar time zone, and literally got off that flight, which was delayed, and we had a night in Sydney, and my physio and I decided to shake out the legs, and this was at midnight in Sydney, and it was just so painful to run. And you know how it is, you know, you run a quick half marathon and your legs hurt, but it was a really bad pain. But I thought, you know, I'll stick it out and do an easy jog and feel better for it in the morning. And then the next day I started feeling worse, and a few days later I decided it was time to go see my doctor, Kate Gazard, down at the Gold Coast, at the Sunshine Coast. And she sent me in for an MRI because she didn't like one of the tests that we conducted, and it ended up being a stress fracture in the sacrum, and game over within 4 days.
And the interesting part about that, as soon as you did that and ran 106, Lionel Sanders immediately came over here and was like, oh my God, I got to up the ante on my training. And then when you had to pull out, it's funny because I think a lot of other sports, people are like, oh good, that guy's not racing. In this sport, there's a camaraderie there where everybody wants the best guys to be at their very best on race day so they can knock them off when they're at their very best. So when you weren't racing, Lionel was bummed, Sebastian was bummed, Pat, everybody, they were all seriously upset that you couldn't race.
Yeah, I think what defines us in triathlon is not so much time, but our great races. And great races in triathlon only happen when everybody's there. You know, you really want everybody to be there on game day. If you race the Olympics and Alistair isn't there, well, you won the Olympics that Alistair wasn't at, kind of thing, you know. And it's the thing that really great races and great athletes, it's maybe not to talk down on any of the competition in the women's race, but oftentimes you can't really see how good Daniela is because she's so far ahead of the field,
right,
that it's really hard to grasp how good her performance sometimes is, and that's why I think we also always look for the best.
It's funny too, because I remember, you know, you won here 2 years in a row, and one of those years we were chatting afterwards, and I mean, you looked like you were totally in control. Everything was, yeah, right. And then afterwards, like, I thought about dropping out half a dozen times. I just felt awful. Is that are there days where that happens and you surprise yourself and have that great race, and other days you just feel phenomenal the whole time?
I think that's part of being in Hawaii. Hawaii is just so mystical and so great, and you come here in the best of shape, and therefore your expectations are just that much higher, and you think it should be easier, at least at some stage. And I think that's what the conditions and this race is really, makes it so unique, is the fact that you're really, you can have a bad day all day long and still have a great race. It's it's very perplexed, and it's not great during the race, but it's that much more satisfying afterwards.
So Lionel was with us yesterday, and he talked about how when he hurt himself and was starting to come back, he got a note from you basically saying, Lionel, I learned my lesson that you can't come back too fast because you'll hurt yourself again. Because he was already posting videos of his hard workouts, and but that's something you don't see that in other sports. And I don't think Mark Allen was telling Dave Scott, hey, I think you should do this for your workout because you're going to hurt yourself. There just seems to be a different type of relationship with this group of pros.
Yeah, I tell you what, maybe sometimes I should just shut up, but Lionel does strike me as a nice guy, and he does strike me as someone that probably after my career I'd go for a beer with, just because he seems like he's a genuinely interesting character. And it somehow, after last year, became the injury of fashion. Ben Hoffman got it, Lionel got it. Actually, Javier had a similar injury that not too many people realized. And it was just, I did so much research, and I was in that situation, and it really is something where you don't want to beat somebody because they're injured.
Right.
It's just you want to beat them because you're the better guy on the day.
So with coming back from that injury, how long was it before you felt you were back, that you were back to where you wanted to be?
Like I said, a lot longer than Lionel. I was. The good thing is for me, it was at the end of the season, and I had a lot of time to gently get back into it. It really wasn't probably until 4 months later that I got into some real training, which was early on in the year.
Right.
Which probably again showed me, that I sometimes start over eager and was maybe in too good a shape already in Oceanside, and basically prolongs the whole season. And having spent my first winter in 17 years back over in Europe, was actually a really good lesson, because we're always chasing summer, and it's always cool to be outside and having a tan and swimming outdoors. But for the whole system to be able to calm down over a winter was really valuable, I think.
So you went to Frankfurt and had a great race there, right? And you and Sebi had a little battle. And Sebi, I think, stepped on something in the swim. And then before the run, before you ran out, you wanted to make sure that Sebi was having some glass removed from his foot. Take us through a little bit on that Frankfurt race, because that was hot. I mean, we're talking this is hot. That was really, really hot. And did you feel like you had the race you want to have there?
Frankfurt was obviously a bit of an excitement. It was the first Ironman in a year for me, because Frankfurt the year before was the last race. And may have gotten a little overconfident in T2, checking on Sebi. Didn't realize his running is going quite as good as it was. No, all jokes aside, I mean, I'd heard that he cut up his foot pretty bad, which is, some of the moto guys who come by just saying, this and this distance, but Sebi's got a cut in his foot. Anyways, wanted to check on it, and it really was, like you say, a hot day. Probably hotter than it is here, but not as humid as it is here. And therefore, the struggle, I feel, is still not quite the same. I think I blew up pretty bad with about 10K to go. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, Sebi blew up even worse. But again, you race each other, and those are the great races that are not just 100% looking at your GPS watch, but actually racing the guys and racing the course, and that was really, really good. So
Alistair Brownlee is sort of following in your footsteps, from coming from the gold medal and coming over here. Alistair, obviously two-time gold medalist. This will be his first time here. I'm sure you flashed back a little to your first time here when 2014, I think it was, when you got third and Sebi won. When you think about Alistair and you think about the conditions here, how do you think he's going to do?
Yeah, I've been watching a few of the interviews and what people say, and how he's not that good in the heat, like in Rio. It wasn't hot at all. And then you look at this guy, he's just an animal. He's got that head that just can flick the switch and he can go until his tank is 100% empty. And I think that's a great recipe for success here. Also, I mean, Javi's a great friend of mine, but when I looked at his preparation coming in here, was it last year? Last year.
Yep.
It was a recipe for disaster. It was never going to work. You know, if you're out there, you're training 200K and running 20K off it. That sounds good, but it's not the way, I believe, to a good Ironman performance. And from what I've been seeing, Sebi's really got the Alistair's really got those intervals dialed. He's got his nutrition. He's got a lot of thought has gone into his campaign. And let's be honest, we know he's not here to come second.
No.
He's not here to come and gather experience or look at the course.
Check out the
He's
fish.
not a tourist. He's not a tourist.
Yeah.
He doesn't show up if he doesn't think he can genuinely win. And I see him as one of the big guns.
Okay, so you've got, and it's funny, another thing when we were talking to Lionel yesterday, he said, listen, I needed to figure out how to qualify to get to this race, because we always talk about how it's the greatest field ever. This year could be the greatest field ever, right? So then fellow countryman Patrick Lange, after you won 2 in a row, now he's won 2 in a row. And I think year one, people are like, okay, maybe that was a fluke because your back was sore and you ended up having to walk a chunk of the marathon. But he ran 2:39, and then he did it again and broke 7:52 last year. When you look at Patrick, and some people are saying, well, now Jan is back. What do you see when you look at Patrick Lange?
When I see Patrick Lange, I see 2 guys. There's a Patrick Lange November till September.
Yes.
And there's a Patrick Lange in October.
Exactly.
And Patrick Lange in October is a weapon. He's fast. He's the guy to beat. There's no doubt. Nobody's ever run faster. Nobody's ever gone faster on this course. And anything other would be whitewashing the facts. The conditions here suit him. I don't know how it's possible to go faster here than you go in Europe. But he manages it every year.
Yes.
And no one else has done that. And that's why he's definitely, the number 1 guy to beat.
So the number 1 cyclist here, Cam Worth, just ran a 2:45 at Ironman Italy and had obviously a great race for him. And he's worked on his running, and gradually he's gotten better and better. How do you see him as a factor?
I worry about Cam mostly because of the 9-man rule that says there's no outside communication. And I think it's the hardest thing for him to stay off Instagram for 4 hours on the bike. And I see him a little bit like my son, you know, when I take away his favorite toy, he gets cranky, he has energy. And he starts burning up things. And that's why I worry about Cam, because he's going to go nuts. I swear he's got a keyboard built into his little Pinarello steering handlebars and, you know, manages to type out stuff. So watch out for him. No, in all seriousness, it's great. He's a great guy. He's great for the sport. He's a real character, and that's what we need.
So do you come into this race looking at, obviously you know all these guys, do you think about who's going to be where at what time, or you just do your own thing?
I don't know. It's a championship race, so you really need to race the guys, and that means you have to take a gamble and see who you can let up the road and who you can't, and of course at the same time you don't always have the choice. You can't always decide, oh, geez, I'm going to ride with Lionel today because Lionel's just currently blowing 450 watts going downhill. And especially him, you know, he's going to be the best he's been here this year, mark my words. Simply because of the injury, actually. A bit like Faris in 2005,
yes.
I think. It's really one of those things to keep a calm head and recognize where your strengths are and believe in them. You know, I think the most powerful thing here is a calm mind. That's not my quote. That's from Eliud Kipchoge, but it should work for the marathon.
It definitely should work for the marathon. What is it about this course that makes it as special as it is? Obviously, besides the history, just the course itself in terms of the ultimate challenge.
The course itself, really, it's not that spectacular. You look at it, and the road is smooth.
Yes.
It should be fast. I don't know why it's not, but it should be. There's some undulation on the run, which is actually good. Same as the bike, it helps to have a bit of undulation, to not just have a dead flat course, because you can get out the seat and have a bit of a change up. And then really it just boils down to the conditions. It's every time, even when it's not here, the humidity is just something that obviously prevents your sweat from working and doing what it should, which is cooling you down. And therefore it's just, I think the fact that you've got everything at stake, you've had a good year or a bad year, depending on your race here. It doesn't matter what else has happened. And the weather conditions.
Since you've come here, started coming here in 2014, how has this race changed? I mean, really, if you look at the run times, even going way back when Mark Allen Dave Scott ran 240 and 241 back in '89, so people are running 239, 240 now. It seems like it's just more aggressive on the bike. People are just riding the bike a lot harder than maybe they did in the past because the bike times have come down. But swim and run are pretty much the same.
And that brings you down to the question of whether we're actually riding harder or we just have better aerodynamics. The thing about the 80s and 90s, besides any other history, is that it was a tough generation. I mean, you look at marathon times all over the world, and the density of times between 2 and 3 hours was way bigger than it is now.
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
the top end times are coming down a little bit, but there are some tough bastards in the days.
Absolutely.
It's just like, got a blister, or you only got one. And they trained hard, they worked hard, and I think really in terms of the overall performance, I'm not sure we're actually going any quicker than those boys were in the day. And if you say we're running 239, there's not too many guys running 239. And the question is also how hard is that person riding beforehand. So in terms of the overall performance, I'm not sure the race has developed as much as we sometimes think it has. Obviously here being condition dependent. The depth of racing, I think, has increased.
Yes.
You used to have a handful of guys, and now you've got a handful of favorites, and then you've got another 15 guys who can blow out a fantastic race come Saturday.
What would it mean to you to get your third win here?
It would be nothing short of an elation. I think it would be such an awesome feeling. But the truth is that I'm grateful to be here a year later, healthy, fit, and with a shot at the crown. And for now, that's what I'm focused on. And on Saturday, I'll do everything to get it and hopefully be able to tell you in the breakfast edition how it feels.
Ladies and gentlemen, how about a round of applause for the great Jan Frodeno? Poncho Man, take us out.
It's Aloha Tuesday, 4 days to the race day. And it's breakfast with Bob.